Okay, welcome everybody to our virtual trade mission with the U.S U.A.E Business Council. My name is Miles Hansen. I'm the president and CEO of World Trade Center Utah. We're grateful for everybody for spending a little bit of time this Monday morning with us as we work to create new opportunities for Utah companies to increase their revenue in the United Arab Emirates. Of course, many of you who we've been working with are aware that just last week, the plan was to be in Dubai and Abu Dhabi with the governor, with the president of the Utah Senate, and about 60 Utah companies. Of course, just like it has upended plans all around the world, COVID got in the way of our trade mission in April. But we are very much looking forward to going to the UAE later on this year, once we've been able to overcome the challenges presented by COVID-19. In the meantime, we are very committed to creating new opportunities for companies to connect, to better understand the opportunities in the UAE, to connect with industry-specific experts so that we can position our Utah delegation such that when we go later this year, they can move forward with creating new business relationships and growing their businesses and partnerships in the United Arab Emirates. Right off the bat, just a couple welcomes and thank yous. First off, I'd like to thank Courtney Ray, who is who runs all the international programming for World Trade Center Utah. She put together a phenomenal program for our trade mission in the UAE this April. As we've had, obviously can't go there right now, she is the one that came up with the idea to do this virtual trade mission. So Courtney, thank you to you and everything that you're doing. Everybody will have a chance to hear a little bit from Courtney as she moderates our question and answer session here in a little bit. I'd also like to thank Danny Seabright and his entire team at the U.S U.A.E Business Council. They were sponsoring our trade mission this April. They're continuing to be very supportive and sponsoring when we get there later on this year. And they are hosting this virtual trade mission with a general session today, as well as our industry-specific breakout sessions tomorrow. And, you know, for those who aren't familiar, the U.S U.A.E Business Council is the premier business organization in the United Arab Emirates. Before coming back to Utah about 18 months ago, I worked in Washington, D.C. at the White House on the National Security Council as a director for Gulf Affairs. And so I worked a lot with our partners in Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and elsewhere. And Danny and his team were integral to strengthening the strategic partnership that exists between the United States and the United Arab Emirates. So Danny, a huge thank you to you and your team for all your support with the trade mission, as well as with this virtual trade mission over the next couple of days. You know, before jumping into the program, I thought it'd be worth providing a quick update for everybody on the work that World Trade Center Utah is doing as part of the Governor's Economic Response Task Force, as well as what we're doing outside of that scope to help Utah companies respond to the challenges that were faced with COVID-19. So first off, Governor Herbert has done a phenomenal job of bringing together key business, government, and civic leaders onto an economic response task force. Derek Miller, who's the president and CEO of the Salt Lake Chamber, is chairing that task force, and World Trade Center Utah is honored to play a role on that. You know, Utah has been known for a long time as a place where people come together to solve problems and to have a highly collaborative approach to addressing the challenges that we face all the time. And that certainly has been true as we're facing the challenges with COVID-19. Utah was the first in the nation to have a comprehensive plan to respond to the economic challenges of COVID-19. We have been pulled together industry leaders from across the state to put together smart policies that now, as we look to reactivate many parts of our economy, we are better positioned than any state in the country to bounce back strong from the economic challenges that we're all facing. We have the data in place to have a very nuanced, nimble, tactical response to COVID-19 in different parts of the state, and that is going to enable us to respond to the challenges and perhaps another wave of COVID-19 down the road in a way that is going to allow us to keep the economy open, to keep business happening, and to help our Utah companies provide goods and services and technologies and innovations to their partners all around the world. A key aspect of this, as we move from what we're calling the urgent phase to the stabilization phase and the recovery phase, is helping companies identify new sources of revenue. the extent to which we are able to help our companies minimize how much they need to retreat from foreign markets will position them to not only hang on to the business they have, but to win market share from other companies from other places in the world that are still hunkered down and still in crisis mode in this urgent phase. And so as an organization, World Trade Center Utah is recalibrating our programs and services to be able to help Utah companies to do just that. We provide free consultations, free market research. We provide grants to help offset the costs of Utah companies maintaining and growing their international sales. And of course, we pull together international programming like this virtual trade mission. So for all of our Utah companies tuning in, we encourage you to reach out to the team. We will take a look at where you are. Maybe you've never done international business before, but you see an opportunity. We want to plug in and support that and help target it, open doors, generate momentum, provide some funding to help you grow, and then to be there to help you make sure you find the right partners in other markets. Or maybe you've already grown internationally, but you're having challenges right now. Reach out. We can help make sure that we open doors and generate momentum for you, whatever country you're operating in. Now let's go ahead and turn to the topic of today, and that's the United Arab Emirates. It's a country that I've had the pleasure of living in and working in for many, many years. It is the cornerstone of the economy and global trade, not only in the Gulf region or the Middle East and North Africa, but South Asia as well. If you look at a map of the world, you'll notice that the UAE is quite literally in the middle of it, and it is a crossroads to many countries and different regions. In many ways, the Utah is a crossroads as well. And so there are many areas for partnership. Many Utah companies are already doing phenomenal business there, but this is a relationship that we want to grow and expand over time. And so today we're very grateful again to have Danny Seabright with us. As he goes through his presentation, you'll notice in the chat function, Hannah has encouraged everybody there to post questions. We want to make sure we calibrate the content today to specifically the questions that you have. Tomorrow, we are going to do industry-specific breakout sessions as a follow-up to today's general session. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we will do a breakout session on energy. At 10:30 a.m., we'll do a session on healthcare and life sciences. At 1 p.m., we will do a session on aerospace and defense. And at 2:30 p.m., we will do a tech and entrepreneurship breakout session led by members of Danny's team with this specific industry expertise. And again, the goal here is today to provide a general overview, talk about what's happening in the UAE. Tomorrow, we'll focus on these specific industries. And then from there, we want our Utah companies with that industry expertise and understanding to then be thinking through what specific opportunities they would like to pursue, who they want to connect with in the UAE, and then we will work very hard to help make those matches for our companies. And again, with an eye towards creating as much momentum as possible towards our trade mission in the fall. And so without further ado, I'd like to let's move forward with our program. We are joined today with Mr. Franz Kolb, who is a Director for Diplomacy and Protocol for Utah Governor Gary Herbert. I like to joke that if Utah were a country, Franz would be our Secretary of State. And so Franz would like to give a brief welcome on behalf of the governor, at which point, Franz, you can go ahead and turn the time over directly to Danny for his presentation. So Franz, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I am just delighted to be here. I want to congratulate the World Trade Center for this virtual trade mission. I had the opportunity to be with Courtney just a couple of weeks ago in the United Arab Emirates, and I'm so grateful for this, what I would consider a first step to trade mission, and then hopefully in the next couple of months we'll be going on a trade mission, on an on-ground trade mission. In behalf of the governor and the governor's office of economic development, I want to congratulate the World Trade Center as well as also Danny Seabright, and I've worked with Danny for many years. He's very well established and has got a great reputation in the United Arab Emirates. So this is international business will continue in spite of this COVID-19. And I'm grateful that we have in our governor, in the governor's office, and also in the governor's office of economic development, people with this vision. And I am excited that we are having this trade mission. Now, this virtual trade mission. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome each one of you, and let's make this productive, very no nonsense, and let's help our companies here in Utah. And also, I'm excited for our friends in the United Arab Emirates that we have been so warmly welcomed when we were over there. My first trip over there was in 1990. So I've been there quite a few times, and I'm just delighted for our good friends to do trade mission, to collaborate with us. So with this, it is my honor, and I'm delighted to introduce to you Mr. Danny Seabright. Danny, I'll turn it over to you.
Franz, thank you very much. I just want to say the USUA Business Council really wants to thank World Trade Center Utah, particularly Miles, Courtney, and Hannah, for organizing this virtual trade mission. We're here to help the governor's mission to the UAE that takes place coming up. And Franz, we appreciate you being on board to help and provide support as well from the governor's office. In the meantime, we're delighted to help today with opportunities for Utah and to highlight for Utah companies for businesses to engage in the UAE. And I thought by way of background, we'd provide a little bit of detail on who we are and what we are, a little bit about the relationship, and how we're all dedicated to advancing the trade and commercial and investment relationship between our two countries. The Business Council has approximately, David, if you want to put up the slides, there we go. The business, and I'm sorry, I should have introduced David Greenhoff from my team as my vice president, my number 2, and Rebecca Rosen is also on the call, and she works on a lot of these verticals and has helped put this together as well. So thank you to my team for that work. By way of background, the Business Council is a bilateral trade association dedicated to advancing the trade and commercial ties between our countries. We have 150 members, composed of leading U.S. and UAE companies. We work to provide our members with information, connections, and support. One of the ways we do this is by hosting as many as 50 to 60 in-person events a year and supporting many, many more. In these unusual times, we have gone virtual, and we are also hosting high-level teleconferences and Zoom conferences and Microsoft Meet conferences with prominent U.S. and UAE business leaders and government officials. On Wednesday, for instance, we're hosting a teleconference with the leaders of the UAE's 2 major airlines, the CEO of Emirates and the CEO of Etihad, to talk about what next with the airline industry and with the UAE as a hub in the region. Let's take a few moments and talk about the U.S.-UAE relationship in economic terms. This relationship, I talk about the overall relationship between our two countries as a stool with 3 legs. Those legs are a political one, a military one, and an economic one. The economic foundation of our relationship is incredibly sturdy. Over the past decade, trade between the U.S. and the UAE has grown 40%. In 2019, there were $24.3 billion worth of bilateral trade. The UAE has been the top export market for the United States in the Middle East, North Africa region since 2009. In 2019, the U.S. export share of that trade relationship was over $20 billion. Top exports to the UAE include aircraft and aircraft parts, electrical machinery, vehicles, precious metals and stone, and agricultural products. And I should also say our healthcare and education are 2 of our leading exports that have really come along in the last number of years. UAE exports to the U.S. have grown as well. In 2019, the UAE exported to the United States $4.3 billion worth of goods, primarily in the aluminum and the steel sectors. When you do the math, the U.S.'s trade surplus with the UAE is one of the largest globally. We're very proud of that. We're very proud that we have an export surplus with the UAE. In the U.S., that surplus, or in 2019, excuse me, that surplus was $15.7 billion. The UAE has invested significantly in the United States, and this is really important as well from a foreign direct investment standpoint. According to Select USA, the total stock of UAE FDI in the United States in 2018 amounted to $26.7 billion. The top sectors were financial services, transportation, consumer products, aerospace, food and beverage, and real estate. However, total UAE investments in the United States in the FDI realm are much, much higher. One UAE sovereign wealth fund alone, Mubadala Investment Company, has invested roughly $100 billion in the United States, or 40% of its $250 billion portfolio. These investments include $15 billion in Global Foundries, which is a Fab 8 facility for microchips in upstate New York, and it's very significant investment in Las Vegas by Dubai with regard to hospitality and hotels, and a number of other major investments around the United States. In turn, U.S. entities have also invested in the UAE, and I could just offer you a couple examples. Amazon recently bought Soup.com for $580 million, and Uber bought a local carrier, Careem, for $3.1 billion. So there definitely are some major U.S. investments in the UAE as well. Let's turn to the UAE economy and economic diversification plans, because this is really important. I tell all of our members, all those companies that want to do business in the UAE, it's really great if you have a product or service that you're very successful with in the US or other international markets. But if that product or service isn't something that the UAE has determined, that's important to its diversification plan, you're not going to have much luck selling that product into the UAE market. And that's what's incumbent on companies here in the US to do their homework first and understand what are the UAE's goals and objectives before they can understand if there's a need for your company's product or service. So regarding diversification, oil exports have historically underpinned the UAE economy. And while they're still very important, that relationship, that mix, if you will, has changed considerably. The UAE produced around 3 million barrels of oil for the last several years, and oil exports now account for 25 to 30% of the UAE's GDP. A short 10 years ago, that was at least 80% of the UAE's GDP. So you can see how quickly that mix has changed. The UAE has successfully diversified its economy into a number of new verticals, becoming a regional hub for travel, tourism, retail, trade, and finance. Dubai International Airport is the world's busiest airport for international travel, and Emirates Airline has become a worldwide brand. Dubai is famous for landmarks such as the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, and for a lot of glitz and glamour. Shoppers from around the world flock to Dubai, home of the world's largest mall. If Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, started a few days ago, if circumstances were normal today, there would be 1 million extra visitors from Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf in Dubai today, celebrating the month of Ramadan, getting ready to celebrate the Eid al-Fitr in Dubai's malls, in its movie theaters, and its other attractions. I should point out that Jebel Ali Port is a regional transshipment hub and one of the largest port facilities in the world. Dubai International Financial Center is home to most major international financial institutions, another key vertical. The UAE continues to be international about building an economy based upon knowledge, technology, and skilled labor. Opportunities for doing business in the UAE abound. The Business Council's programming and membership base are a great reflection of those areas in which there are opportunities for American companies to do business in the UAE. David, if you could go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. Traditionally, our most important verticals have been aerospace and defense, energy, financial services, as I said before, infrastructure, and logistics. There will always be opportunities in these sectors. As I mentioned earlier, though, our biggest growing areas or sectors for business are healthcare and education and technology. This demonstrates the UAE's focus on these areas as well. It also reflects the fact that no country can match U.S. capabilities in these sectors, and it is why the U.S. is in such demand and our brands are in such demand with regard to these sectors. Franz, I think you want to go on mute. Focus areas is food security, and we just led a very, very important trade mission to the UAE 2 months ago. The UAE appointed a minister of state for food security, and she partnered with us to host our food security mission. We're doing a lot more work in this area, and in fact, we're going to have a food security telecom webinar towards the middle of May, and you're all invited to participate if that's an area of interest. So let me just say a few words about how to do business in the UAE, and before we get to the Q&A. The UAE has worked very hard to create a welcome environment for conducting business. The UAE is ranked #1 in the Middle East and 16th in the World Bank's Doing Business Index. The dirham is pegged to the dollar, and the UAE does not restrict profit transfer or capital repatriation. UAE does not levy individual income taxes or federal corporate taxes, save for branches of foreign banks and oil-producing companies. The UAE has myriad free trade zones that are exempt from other forms of taxation. The biggest question is where to set up operations in the UAE for most companies. A business can be licensed through the economic department of one of the Emirates, or it can be established in a free zone. Free zones allow for LLCs that are 100% foreign owned. And companies increasingly are operating in free zones have traditionally been restricted from engaging in certain onshore activities in the UAE mainland. Next month, the Business Council will be launching the latest version of our guide to doing business in the UAE, which is on your screen right now. We're doing this in conjunction with one of our law firm partners, Morgan Lewis. Our current version is on our website, but this new version will go up digitally on our website in about 2 weeks. Should you be interested in joining the webinar that we will host, we'll let Courtney and others get details of that to you so that you might register. This wouldn't be a good discussion or appropriate timely discussion if I didn't say a few words about how the pandemic has impacted the UAE. The pandemic has certainly hit the UAE economy very, very hard, as it has deeply affected its 3 most important industries: oil and gas, commercial aviation, and tourism and hospitality for sure. That said, the UAE is in a very good position to weather the crisis and has taken very, very impactful steps from the very beginning with regard to social distancing, with cleaning, with regard to medical facilities being quarantined. The UAE has really prepared itself to deal with the crisis and is coming out the other side. I don't know if you saw, but over the weekend, Dubai and Abu Dhabi have been able to relax some of their most stringent social distancing practices because the curve has flattened and is receding in the UAE today. The UAE has also responded with a spate of economic stimulus packages. Those are occurring at the federal level and at the emirate level. We're working with the U.S. government to coordinate the U.S. economic stimulus packages and where there is overlap with some of the things that the UAE are doing to understand if there are ways that we can capitalize on creating business and helping start the engine of business again with regard to our companies that are working together in both places. And with that, I'll stop there and turn it over to the discussion. Hopefully my brief overview has generated a few questions. Courtney, please.
Great, thank you so much, Danny. That was really informative, very helpful. One thing I noticed has come up both today and also in our technology breakout is a couple of people have asked about Edge, and they wanted to know if you could speak about Edge and how they typically engage with U.S. companies and what is required to have a partnership with them, et cetera. Can you comment on Edge?
Sure. So Edge is a defense firm, and Edge is the latest iteration of the UAE's efforts to reform its defense industries and bring them all together under one umbrella. There was a previous incarnation of this for the last 2 or 3 years. That effort has come to an end, and the Crown Prince has instituted Edge back in, I want to say, around the November, at the end of last year, stood up this new entity with a new leader. I know yes of Edge quite well. It's a conglomeration of all of the UAE's existing defense companies brought, again, as I said, under one umbrella into one place so that they can work internally on their efficiencies and on cost cutting of how they run their own defense industry. Now, up until this point, Edge had not been really tasked with engaging too much with foreign defense companies and partnerships. That was being done by other entities and companies. However, with this new iteration, Edge will be taking on a lot of the foreign partnerships with American, European, Asian defense companies. And as well, my understanding is that the offset program, which is really critical, it's a requirement for all American companies that sell more than $2 billion worth of goods and services to be registered and to deal with the offset requirements there, that the offset program is also going to be coordinated into Edge. The best that I can tell you is that this is all a work in progress. There are places to connect with Edge at the moment, for sure. If you're an American company looking to promote what you have to sell in the equipment, technology, or services aspect of defense. But I'm going to just be very honest, it's still a bit uneven, and because it is a work in progress. And I'll stop there.
Just one more thing related to Edge. Are there joint ventures that are required or optional, and how are the JVs structured? Was another part of the questions.
Well, again, there are no new JVs with Edge. Edge has inherited all of the JVs that were created under the previous iterations of the UAE defense industry, and there are many with foreign companies. So going forward, I think there's the whole idea of the UAE defense industry from the get-go. The Crown Prince wanted to have a defense industry that would allow the Emiratis some ability to be independent, some ability to have security of equipment and ammunition in a crisis, so that they weren't at the bottom of the line to get supplies if there was a real crisis in the region. And that's just, a lot of that's just good common sense for a sovereign to want to create their own security capability. Going forward, I expect Edge to have a number of new partnerships with American companies and European companies and Asian companies, and we'll just have to wait to see how those partnerships are structured. Raytheon, about 2 years ago, was the first American company to have a 100% owned landed company in the UAE under their new offset program. And that's a very significant development. And I think there will be more possibilities of that in the future. But I think there's the preference size, the preference will be partnership and not 100% owned entities on the ground.
Okay, thank you. Also, we understand that the UAE wants to be one of the leading countries in AI, or artificial intelligence, using international cooperation. They want to exchange knowledge and ethics and how to bring in expertise, and they're looking at all their current policies across the UAE to see what hurts or helps their AI program. How can Utah companies get involved with this effort if they feel that they have something to contribute? Is it something where they go through Federal AI Office or a DFF? And can you comment on their AI efforts? And are they, in fact, as robust as what we're hearing?
Well, they are very robust, Courtney. What I'll say is that the Minister of AI, and it was the first, Omar Alama was the first Minister of Artificial Intelligence ever in the world. I think there's a few more now since he got his job, or received his job or his posting. His job is to set broad policy for AI. It's not necessarily to look at applications or business opportunities, although he is a bit of an entrepreneur at heart, starting his first company, I think, when he was 8 or 10 years old,
oh, wow.
Making his first million when he was 12. So he has that background, but his job is to help set broad policy and to work with UAE federal and emirate level ministries, if you will, to set that background. Now, there's other entities in the Dubai government and the Abu Dhabi government who are actually procuring AI application and services for the ministry, for the government, and then they're working with business to validate AI applications as they pertain to business. So there's a number of different ways to connect depending on what your companies think their what they bring to the table of interest might be, and we could help work with you and them to identify the right people for sure, or the right entities for sure. But this is a very sophisticated effort. It's a very progressive effort. The government in Dubai has set a goal of being called and being known as the most connected city in the world in 10 years. And that was from 2 years ago. So they only have 8 years to go. That includes blockchain, that includes AI, that includes everything. And they really are making a lot of advances. The expo, the World Expo, that was supposed to start this October, was meant to be a showcase for some of what they're doing as well. That's now been delayed till next year in October. But I would expect that'll be another great opportunity to connect and see the sort of the latest and greatest in what the UAE is doing, and understand and meet the folks that are in charge in the government and the private sector for advancing AI in the future.
And Courtney and Danny, can I jump in real quick with a quick follow-up? Because I think this is just looking at the companies that are registered today. We have several tech companies. One example, Worldwide Tech Connections. They are developing an AI-driven platform to help with translation. So think of Google Translate on steroids. The significant leader of the company, Wesley Snipes, who most people recognize as an actor, he's also a phenomenal business leader. He's on the Zoom call today. So Wesley, we're grateful for you joining us. But I look at, there's several other companies like this. So when you look at tech companies that have new innovative technology, they're still in that growth phase. Are there opportunities in the UAE to connect, to use the UAE as a platform to deploy these technologies to scale and to grow? Or is it better for them to have success and to grow and scale elsewhere, in this case, in California, in the Western United States, and then once they have a long track record, look at jumping and growing in the UAE? What would be your advice to Wesley and to other companies like that?
Well, first, thank you. I need to know a little bit more specifically about each capability that the company has and is offering. But the short answer to your question is the UAE is interested in both. One of the key drivers that the UAE has set for itself is to become a knowledge economy in the future. And to be a knowledge economy, you have to create and generate IP and license it there, and be a leader in creating new knowledge for the future. So while Mubadala, for example, has set up a venture capital arm in San Francisco, and it deploys capital into the Valley in various startups with the idea and the goal of bringing those startups to the UAE and the broader Middle East in the future for market. They are also focused on bringing startups to the UAE and having them partner and create IP in the UAE from the get-go. So it's both. And some companies don't have the wherewithal to immediately come to halfway around the world to the Middle East and try to do something initially there. Some do. It just depends. I mean, it's going to be specific to each company's situation. And those are areas, again, where the Business Council can help you think of what's the best approach you might have for what you're trying to offer and ways you want to partner. I'll just say that with regard to what Mubadala is doing on the West Coast, I've said in some of these meetings with some of their startup partners a few times, and healthcare applications comprise about 50% of some of the startups that they've created in the Valley, that they're putting funding into in the Valley. And they're also part of the SoftBank Vision Fund. I know there's been a lot in the press about that lately. That's another partner how they've been a platform in which they've been utilizing to deploy capital into the United States, particularly into California. But the UAE is doing its own deployment of capital as well.
That's great. Thank you, Danny, for that explanation. And just for a little more context for everybody listening in, at World Trade Center Utah, we've been in very close contact with Mubadala, their office in Silicon Valley. They've made investments into Utah companies, and we are working to understand what type of companies they're looking for in terms of the venture investments, what are the opportunities in the UAE, and then we're working to make those connections with the appropriate Utah companies that fit the profile of companies they're looking to invest in. And Danny, when you were speaking, it reminded me of a Utah biotech company that I took to the UAE a little more than a year ago. And I think this is illustrative of the opportunity that exists, where you had a company that was starting to scale and grow. They needed some additional capital to help fund future growth. And at the same time, they were looking to break into new markets. And so they looked at the UAE as an opportunity not only to get funding, but more importantly, as a base of operations to grow and expand throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia. And the value of international investment like that in partnerships is that not only do you get the capital to help fuel the growth, you get partners in the key market, the strategic market, with skin in the game in your company. Those partners then can open up the market for you. They met with Mubadala Ventures, are having active ongoing conversations with them, with the Cleveland Clinic operation in the UAE, and several other entities. And so that's a type of partnership that we want to really facilitate and grow. Too often companies come to us and say, hey, we'd love to get some investment. Can you help connect us with rich people in the Middle East? And the answer is probably not, unless if there's a clear market opportunity, you've got a clear track record, in which case that is the basis of a true partnership. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to build partnerships. And so that's an area where for the companies calling in today, please reach out if you're interested in this type of partnership. We'd love to take a look and work with Danny and his team, with Mubadala and our other partners in the UAE, and see what potential partnership opportunities could exist. If they are there, then we'll go ahead and we'll open doors and we'll get people connected. And if they're not, then we can sit down and say, okay, what type of growth could happen with your company and your technology to help get you ready to the point where you can then jump in and into the UAE market, either on the sell side or perhaps with a partnership of some kind. So thanks for that explanation. Courtney, back over to you.
So we had another question that was sort of on the lines of venture investing. We have one of the attendees who would like to understand what UAE's appetite for venture investing is, and how could a venture investment firm be involved with finding startups in the UAE?
Well, first, let me say that that's why Mubadala came to the West Coast in the first place. 3 years ago, they were trying to, various entrepreneurs and investors in the UAE were trying to figure out and understand how they could attract American private investment into the region. And so many opportunities in the U.S. Number one, right next door, wherever California, Oregon, Washington was, and there was this unfamiliarity with the UAE and lack of sophistication of understanding what the UAE was, other than a place where there were these glitzy buildings and they had a nice airline and things like that. So Mubadala decided that the best way to start bringing American venture capital on board was to open this office in San Francisco and start working together in joint investments with American VC funds, so that the American VC funds would come to understand and be more comfortable with Mubadala as a partner going forward, and more broadly the UAE as a partner going forward. And then would be a place, as Miles referred to a place to scale business once the startups got to that phase where they were ready to scale their product on a larger level. So the bottom line answer to the question is there's a lot of interest for American VC in the UAE to work together. There's now a Mubadala office in New York City as well that's looking at some aspects of this. There's some of the other big parastate enterprises like DP World have created investment funds where they're looking for foreign VC funds to work together with them. And then they have a plethora of small companies, if you will, small entrepreneurs in the UAE that are always looking for startup funding and looking for the ability to find partners. So there's a number of avenues for approaching this. And the bottom line answer to the question is the interest is very high.
That's great. Thank you. Another thing you had mentioned is you said the biggest growth areas you're seeing now are healthcare, education, and technology. We had a lot of companies that were healthcare and education and technology as well, but I know that's a much broader topic, so it's a little bit harder to cover technology in that, and maybe we can cover it in the session tomorrow. But I am curious, in terms of healthcare and education, if you can maybe tackle that a little bit to give us a little more specifics on what exactly they're looking for in healthcare and technology.
Well, traditionally, as you know, Courtney, with regard to healthcare, up until about 10 years ago, all UAE, Saudi, Gulf patients came to the United States. Anything serious. They determined that they needed to bring this back home to the UAE. The clinic, which Miles mentioned again, was one of the first outcomes of this notion of bringing the partnerships that they'd already established in foreign markets to service their patients there, to bring those partnerships back to the UAE, to bring that capability and expertise back to the UAE so they could take care of patients on the ground in the UAE, not just from the United Arab Emirates, but from Saudi and other countries as well in the broader region, including as far flung as India and China and Africa. Right. So that process has been going on. They have some unique health concerns in the UAE, not unique to the world, but unique to their population, like diabetes and obesity. Those are two things that they've had to deal with in a large majority of their population, and they've been dealing with quite successfully. But in general, they're looking for partners from around the world that want to come there and help them be best in class in providing healthcare. Increasingly, they want to move into education and research in healthcare, and creating opportunities for doctors and healthcare professionals who are coming to work and live in the UAE to also do original research, study, publish, all of those sorts of things. So the whole aspect of healthcare is open. Now, it's a bit saturated. I think we probably have, David, correct me if I'm wrong, we have over 35 or 40 members now from across the United States of different healthcare institutions that have relationships with the UAE that are doing great work. They want to do more, and that's been a big focus. David, you want to add here, because I know you work closely with some of these members. Do you want to add a few words?
I think you pretty much covered it, but the main idea is that, you know, the UAE for very long has sent their patients abroad. They're looking to build up their local capabilities, and they're looking for best-in-class partnerships to do that. So it involves having healthcare professionals come to the UAE and bring their expertise, work with their local physicians, and build up local capacity. And that's on the hospital side, but really throughout the entire ecosystem, whether you're talking about healthcare IT, you know, they're doing a very interesting work right now in terms of making electronic medical records and creating a health information exchange that's expanding to the entirety of Abu Dhabi and then the entirety of the UAE. They're doing some interesting work in terms of artificial intelligence in healthcare. They really want to make sure that they're bringing the best technologies to bear in order to advance what they're doing on the ground and provide world-class healthcare to their citizens and residents.
And we should say in life sciences with pharmaceuticals, they want to do original research, not only bring US molecules to the UAE, but have American, European pharmaceutical firms come and do research and development, create molecules, new molecules in the UAE going forward. So it's all open.
Okay, really helpful. And can you focus a little bit on the education part? What exactly are they looking for in education? Growth. So
the partnership that all of you are going to know very well is New York University. Crown Prince decided he wanted an American-style university in the UAE about 10, 12 years ago. So they went to the most, I would call the most progressive, most out there school in the United States, in New York City, and that's the school that they brought to the UAE. And the chancellor and the president at the time, one rule was, we want to do this. We think it's great, but you can't put any restrictions on the way we do what we do. And we're going to come and set up a true New York campus environment and curriculum in the UAE. And they did, and they have, and it's fantastic and wonderful. And they have the highest number of Rhodes Scholars of any institution in the world today, which is absolutely amazing in just a few short years. And there's many other partnerships with American universities. I will emphasize again that increasingly they're moving into the research and development phase, into the higher education phase. If you have a nuclear industry like they do with their new nuclear reactors that they're opening up, they want to have Emiratis and locals that are schooled and educated on some of the physics the science and tech of the nuclear industry in the UAE. They want to build the ecosystem for the education piece in the UAE increasingly, so they don't have to send all of their kids for STEM elsewhere. So that's a big aspect of what's going on with regard to education as well.
Okay, and since we have a few more minutes, I know that tech was the last area, which seems like a huge thing to address, but is there any particular area or several areas that you would say you're seeing the most growth within tech?
Well, you mentioned AI, which is that's sort of the buzzword and the flavor of the moment for sure. But traditional tech, from the standpoint of anything that Google is doing, as an example, I could name a number of companies that Google is doing to bring digital application to the way we live our lives in business and government. In particular, government services. I mean, that, as I sort of highlighted earlier, that's really huge for the UAE right now, to digitize the government experience and have it be a friendly user-facing environment going forward. Just trying to think. I mean, Facebook and all of the social media aspects of the digital world are really important to the Emiratis. I mean, people make fun or make mention of sometimes the Saudis are the most digitally connected in the region, in that they have 3 or 4 cell phones apiece, or they're the highest users of Twitter. I mean, the region in general connects digitally in somewhat interestingly in different ways than we do in the West. And there's really rich application there and opportunities for American companies that want to apply themselves to those unique requirements. I think I'll stop there. I mean, with Amazon and with Uber and the way they've been able to come in and apply themselves in the region, I just think there's all kinds of opportunity for the most sophisticated aspects of this, robotics, 3D printing. These are all areas that the UAE has in its development plans. We work really, really closely with the gentleman, Badr Olama, who runs the 4th Industrial Revolution panel or conference that goes on every year. And these are all things that the UAE is focused on and making a lot of strides in, actually.
I might just add areas to think about, and ones that were particularly active. One is fintech. Financial technology has been a huge focus for a few years now, and they have fintech accelerators in both Abu Dhabi and Dubai that have been pretty successful. And then the newest area, we mentioned it, or Danny mentioned it in the presentation, is ag tech. They want the latest and the greatest. They're looking to farm food in the desert, so to speak, and they want to know what innovations American companies have to bring to bear.
Yes, we have a few companies that were on our trade mission that hopefully will be coming when we will be supposedly there in a few months that are in that category. So that's terrific news. Great. Well, we're so grateful for your time. This was so helpful. And Miles, do you want to hop back on and just review again one more time the breakout sessions for tomorrow? In case anyone has not signed up for tomorrow, we'd love you to join us, even if it's not specifically your area of expertise. It's always helpful to learn about other areas that may be of interest. Miles, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Courtney, for moderating that discussion. I hope a key takeaway for everybody today is that Danny, David, and their team at the U.S.U.A.E. Business Council are tremendous resources. They're very well connected with everybody that you need to connect with in the UAE. So we're grateful for that partnership, Danny and David. We look forward to continuing to build this momentum to help link and create strategic partnerships between Utah and the UAE. Very briefly, again, everybody who signed up today will get an email from Hannah here shortly. It will include the slides that Danny went over, as well as links to where you can sign up for our industry-specific breakouts tomorrow. Very briefly, again, at 9 a.m., we will be covering energy. 10:30 a.m., we will be working on healthcare and life sciences. 1 p.m., aerospace and defense, and 2:30 p.m., tech and entrepreneurship. All those times are Utah times. Please reach out to Courtney or Hannah if you have questions that you would like to make sure we cover in those breakout sessions. I know Danny, Dave, and Rebecca and others on the team who will be presenting. We'd love to get a steer from all of you of what would be most helpful. And then again, we will make sure that we spend maybe 20 or 30 minutes doing presentations and discussing, and save the balance of the time for questions and answers. And that's really, if we're going to be serious here, if we're going to use the time and energy we're all putting into this to drive positive outcomes for our Utah companies and potential partners on the UAE side, We need to make sure that we are coming prepared. Ask detailed questions. You can get specific about your company because there will be lessons in every answer that will be beneficial for everybody else on the call, especially since we'll be focused on a single industry. So again, thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you to the USUA Business Council. I hope everybody has a great day, and we look forward to seeing everybody again tomorrow. Thank you.